Hello, welcome to March 10th, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation, an exercise to remember my objectives and principles and to see how I'm doing applying these to my life. First, last night and yesterday, um, usual, woke up early, but I think I have maybe an idea about what's happening. I was watching a video yesterday in the evening about um, not being able to sleep, and something very clear was suggested by the person. It was a TED Talk and or a TEDx talk, and they were simply, it was a doctor, and he was simply describing a sleep disorder. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, namely sleep apnea, and which, as you may already know, I barely knew about it, but I know a little better now, is when we stop breathing. And he was describing how it wakes us, that event can have the effect of rousting us from complete slumber into complete awakeness, whether we like it or not. As you can imagine, by if you were to cut off your airway for a bit, your body's going to react. Now, excuse me. This doesn't necessarily explain why it always happens at the same time, although maybe it does. I don't want to, I'm not a doctor. Anyway, the short end of this message is that I'm going to go see a doctor and explain what's happening to me. But the one thing that I found really interesting was that the doctor described how they usually don't see, this doctor doesn't usually see his patients, nor do his colleagues in this field, not within months of the onset of sleep apnea, but years into it, sometimes more than a decade into it, they'll see it. And usually it's not because of the prompting of the person that's suffering from the sleep disorder, but it's because of a spouse who will tell them something really scary, like, I witnessed you, stop breathing last night in bed. You go see somebody. And even then, they're not prompted to do it. And over dinner, while I shared this with my wife and my daughter, Yumiko commented. She said, Kurt, I have noticed that you do stop breathing at night. She said, you just kind of stop altogether. And I was like, well, there it is. So maybe we're onto something here. So I'll make an appointment with the doctor, and maybe I can get to the bottom of this. The good news is apparently there's good ways to treat it. So very straightforward ways that involve basically keeping the air channel open. Now I'm just going to reserve it. I'm not going to pontificate on it any further. What do I know? I'll go see a doctor and take the next steps from there. Okay, so as for yesterday was another challenging day, but I got a lot done. I still didn't work on that contract. Still need to work on that. I'm hoping I'll have time to do that today. I have one big meeting in the afternoon today, the last meeting of the day. I'm covering for somebody, and I really don't know what to do with that meeting. A lot of people will be there. I've only seen that meeting run once, and I don't remember if I could find the agenda for that to know. Because if I can find if the meeting, well-run meetings will have, notes and agendas, and you can just kind of, carry on. My wayward son. There'll be peace when. Never mind. So we'll see what happens. I'm a little anxious about that. Let's do the good life. 7 objectives. Number 1 is to always be ready to die. To be in a settled, finished state as much as possible. It's like having dinner always ready while you're still cooking. Next is to make good and effective use of time. Do not take these days and nights for granted. And my main way of doing that now is by reading. That is my most effective use of time at this point in my life. Next is the development and maintenance of good life principles. These 7 and 30. To keep at it, to work at it, to challenge them, to find out whether they're incomplete or poorly worded, and to fix that, and to keep my written version of that up to date. The next objective is to cultivate good emotional reactions so that I'm responding well to the world. And then to perform good actions. Like I've got one I can pull from yesterday. At lunchtime, Yumiko and I were walking our dogs to the dog park, which is about quarter mile, half away, between quarter mile and a half away, mile away. And along the way, she and I were, I had us cross the street because there was a little hazard on the road there, doing some construction. So we crossed the street. The neighbor is doing some work on his area there. Hard to walk. So we crossed the street and we were walking along the street together. And I noticed up ahead of me, maybe 2 houses up, a white van. And the man had just stepped out of the car from the driver's seat. It was facing out. He just stepped out, and as he stepped out, the van started to move with no one in it. And he immediately realized that, and he turned around and he ran to it, and he tried to jump back in because the door was open, and he fell and stumbled. And he didn't get run over, but he did take a nice hard hit. And the van began to accelerate. His driveway went down, went into the street. It was too far away for me to be able to run and reach. And it started to go across the street, and I heard the man, as he was getting up, saying, "No, no, no." And the van crossed the street. Didn't really accelerate too much, but it was already moving pretty good. Hit the driveway. He was running after it. Hit the driveway, and then it was a slight uphill on the other one, and then went up and crashed into the house. Now it had lost some of its forward momentum. It was being driven by me, because clearly he had left it in drive. He got in the van, put the van in drive, sat there, foot on the brake, and realized, oh, I forgot something or something. And he got out of the van, and the van took off. Now, in drive, it's not, the engine's just idling, so it's not a lot of power. But it was with that coupled with the downhill energy, gave it enough to get across the street and then up the other driveway. And it didn't hit very hard, but it did hit. It was nice. It wasn't hard enough to deploy the airbags. And I noted that. And he had a kind of a black bra on the front of the van, which might have softened things a little bit. But it did hit, and it was audible. And Yumiko and I were across the street, standing with our dogs, and he exclaimed when it hit. And then the neighbor next door had their garage door open. I saw a woman in the garage, and she turned and looked at us because I think she thought it was me, the man's voice, exclaiming. She was probably wondering what I was yelling about. Interesting triangulation. She wasn't aware of her neighbor's van crashing into the neighbor. I wish I had thought to take a photo at that point. So he immediately caught up with the van, got in, backed up a little bit, parked, turned around, looked at things, turned and looked at us and said, "Wow, no damage." And he jumped back in the van, put it in reverse, backed into the street, and took off down the road. It all happened like that. Yumiko and I stood there. Both Yumiko and I were more concerned with the man and kind of just taking it all in. And he was gone before in a moment. Now, we carried on with our walk. And on the way back from the dog park, I walked up through the grass to the house where the man had struck the house. And he was wrong. There was damage. He had literally broken the house. The whole, it was like one of those little corner things that sticks out right where the entryway to the house. He collided with that, and there were cracks and indentation all the way up. That was going to be expensive to fix. So now, crap. Now, the neighbor, so I went up and I knocked on the door of the house and no one answered. So no one was there, to tell him what had happened. Again, I wish I'd taken a photo. At that point, I didn't know that if the van was even a neighbor. I thought maybe it was a delivery person. But the fact that it was parked in their driveway, they're probably their neighbor. So I went back. I had work to do. I went back and did my day's work. And then later in the afternoon, in the evening, when I took my dogs for the last dog walk just alone, I went back and kind of had to drag the dogs. They didn't want to go because they've got a course they like to take. I said, "Come on, guys, we got a good deed to do," so to speak. This is why I'm talking about it now. The objective of doing good things. I went back and there was the van parked in the same spot it had been when it took off on its adventure to hit the house across the street. So it was the neighbor. So I looked at the van. I couldn't see any damage on the van because of the fabric bra. But I walked across the street. I went up to the neighbor and knock, knock, knock. Ding, ding, ding. And no one came. So I went out, carried on my walk. An hour later, came back. Knock, knock, knock. Ding, ding, ding. No one came. So today I'll leave a note. If I knock, 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 and ding, 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 and yet no one comes. Yet I kind of, there's a piece of me, very small piece of me, tiny little voice that I won't even begin to give any listen to it all, which is saying, just stay out of it, stay out of it. Because I can just imagine, first of all, if this is a guy that would crash into his neighbor's house and do a hit and run, that says a lot about his character. I have no evidence that it was actually him. There's just a broken. So here's the neighbor across the street. This is what their experience is going to be when I finally imagine they answer the door. And I say, "Hi, I live a couple blocks away, and I saw the guy across the street crash into your house yesterday." Or last week, if I don't get to them this week. If they don't, well, I'll leave them a note today. And then what are they going to do? Are they going to walk across the street and say, "Did you crash into my house?" And what's that guy going to say? "Crap, I got caught." He's going to be in the heat of the moment, right? "Yes, no, I didn't. Yeah, well, whatever." And it's going to be bad. It's are police going to get involved? Is it going to come down to he said, she said? Literally, my wife and me. Is that guy going to make up some story? To try to, throw the blame elsewhere? Try to throw it on me, maybe? I don't know how these things can go. So I just take all that stuff, those little voices, still small voices in my, shrill small voices. That shrill small voice inside my head, and put it aside. Yeah, I'll compose the note today, print it up, put it in an envelope, and leave it at their door, and call it that. I'll leave my phone number, and if I hear back from them and they need a witness, Yumiko and I will step forward. Damn, I wish I'd taken a photo. Because I was right across the street. I could have whipped out the phone, taken a photo of the van against the house with the man getting in, and that would have been that. Or if I'd yelled to the neighbor across the street in the garage, but what would I yell? "Hey, did you see that?" Circumstance. Anyway, let's carry on. So the performance of good action was the last one. The next, number 6, I think it is, the recognition of true limits and true opportunities. And then the last objective is to do just one thing at a time and do that thing slowly. Now my 30 principles. The principle of war is to always be fighting against propositions of truth, particularly my own. The principle of reason is to be objective, honest, and a skeptic. Principle 3 is the homunculus, the suggestion that I don't live forever, and that I just have my consciousness that's around for the time that I'm around, as long as I'm animated and living. Next is the Anchorhold, just a reminder that my consciousness is alone in the world, even though I'm a family man, even though I have a wife who sleeps by my side every night, and a daughter who I love and care for, and 2 little doggies who I likewise. I'm ultimately alone, as are all of us. Then comes the home of good and evil, the suggestion that right and wrong are not absolutes. They're mere opinions formulated out of our best attempt to make sense of the world. Then comes the principle of purpose. The purposes in my life are to be a good husband and father, to be a virtuous man in society. For example, all the aforementioned activities that I'm planning to do to communicate to that homeowner that they've been the victim of a hit and run, so to speak. And then to share my mission, which is the story of in my book, Going Alone, and the resulting good life principles and objectives. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is made of little pieces, and ultimately it boils down to those little pieces, and likewise we boil down to those little pieces after we're dead. Heck, the process even starts before we're dead. Then comes the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that is. My friend Michael over in the Discord, by the way, we have a Discord. You're welcome to come join us. It's called The Good Life. It's a place where we talk and share and have fun and tell jokes and kind of are there for one another. You can find it if you go to my website, goingalone.org. And if you go to the homepage and you wait a few seconds, a little light box will pop up. There'll be a link. You can click on that, and that'll take you right to the Discord. Like I said, it's a small community, but it's a good place. Where was I? Somehow I got there from the atomic principle. Oh, the principle of nature, yeah. Next is maturity. No, the pirate ride. The suggestion that free will is an illusion. Then comes maturity, and its sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude, which are the characteristics and attitude that I try to apply in life so that I don't make my same mistakes twice. I don't make my mistakes twice, more than once, if I can avoid it. Then comes the social principle. We are social critters. We need each other. And then the principle called public speaking. Reminder to be very careful about what I say, what I write, what words I use, and to never ever gossip. Wow, I can't remember the last time I've gossiped. I remember a couple of times I was tempted to. That's like removing a troubling stain from your carpet. I can remember it used to be right over there. It's the place where I spilled that coffee that one time. Got that nice cleaner out and I took that stain right out. That stained carpet looks good. That's how it feels not to have gossiped in living memory. I can remember being a gossip in the past, but I don't remember what I used to say. That's a good feeling. Next comes the temperance, the suggestion to control my consumption of all things, particularly work, because there's more things to life, and I do a good solid job when I'm working. Don't need to have it pull in more of my life in. Then comes after temperance comes why am I kind of stumbling here? Oh, the horror show. Life is truly a terrible place. All kinds of awful things happening. I want to remember that, though. I don't want to hide from that fact and stay up here in my little citadel office, safe and secure from the world. It's a nice place. But I need to engage with the world. I need to help with the fight towards virtue. Sounds like a poorly written title of a movie. Maybe a religious movie. The Fight Towards Virtue, starring. Okay. Then comes the that which must be born. One of those things is the fact of the horror show. And then the Feast of Offal, the consumption of the terrible stuff in life, and then releasing that into the world by throwing our upset up into the air around everyone we love. That's one interesting way to throw it, to say it like a food fight. Take all this, grabbing all the food off the plate. I'm so upset. Blah. And people are taking it because they're, in a way, they're more like a gossipy, voyeuristic, like, oh, he's upset. Like, wow, better him than me. And then, but it kind of soaks into you. And then you're a little weaker and more vulnerable to your own kind of upset that might come later. And thus it carries on. So I try not to perform it or consume it in either case. Next comes this principle of two principles: distraction and the agency and the great indifference, where agency is us and the great indifference is the emptiness of the universe. And we distract ourselves throughout life so we don't have to see that. Namely through our jobs and our families and whatever hobbies we enjoy. Distraction, distraction, distraction. So I don't have to see that I'm alone, empty, and mortal. And that there's a whole lot of nothing on the horizon for all of us. Coming soon to a theater near you, to a life near you, to a life that you live. I wonder if that's part of the horror show. Anyway, the next principle is called the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else or be anywhere else or be doing anything else, but to be okay with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. Then the Path of Wildness, which is a way forward into new life. Yumiko and I are planning our next foyer into that. And then the risk of avoiding risk. The surface level risk of all the safe and sane: home, education, job, family, savings, and then the deep level risk of not finding ourselves and winding up old and secure and, like all the old people that I see around here. I don't know, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to impugn them. I have no idea how deep their lives go. But I do know if you sacrifice the adventure of youth and the desired adventure of your life for the safe and sane, then you've given something up on the altar that no later penance can bring back. That's the risk. Then comes sin and damnation, where the sins in my world, my worldview, are being untrue, believing things too easily, relying on hope, trusting in faith, believing because of authority, tradition, or dogma, and gossiping. The consequence of all those things are damnation in the here and now. Then comes complete oblivion, the principle. the suggestion that there is nothing after life, just the same thing we had before life, but forever. Next comes the Great Life Adventure, the suggestion to enlist the decade of our 20s, or later, but particularly the decade of our 20s, when we can best afford and withstand the struggle of a great life adventure, to do something to forge our story that we can later then build upon, particularly if we begin to hear the next principle, the call of the muse, to record what we experienced and learned, and to tell our own story. That's called the season of philosophy. Next comes the bullseye aim. That's the one I missed yesterday, I think. Striving for the mark and usually missing. Next week I have huge meetings all next week. Big week next week. And I'm sure I'll do the bullseye aim. But it'll be off to a good start otherwise. Then comes the uphill climb. Up, trudge, keep moving on life, getting higher and higher. Check that view. And then arena and utility. Life is an arena for the execution of our living, utilizing the principles that we've developed as our tools. Then nothing is enough. This is a suggestion towards simplicity. And then finally, the principle of fun. A reminder to have fun. Do something that makes us smile and laugh. Not all serious stuff all the time. I really got to work on this one. I tend to be too much of the serious stuff. Now for today, like I said, I only have a couple of meetings. One big one in the afternoon. Maybe I can do a little reconnaissance with a few people ahead of time and say, you know, what should I talk about? Once I've got 30 people in the room. Hi, everybody. How's it going? That's where I am right now. How do I go from there to, okay, here's what we're going to talk about today? I can do that. I can race around and talk about people before the meeting, the people in the know. All right. Let's start the day. Be safe, but not too safe.